Apple stock moving a little lower today after a downgrade from UBS. The firm cutting the tech giant down to neutral from a buy on soft iPhone sales and services growth. Yahoo Finance's Jared Blikre coming to us now from the New York Stock Exchange with more on this. Hey, Jared.
Hey there. Well, it's Apple, and we've seen this incredible run. Also happens to be options expiration week, and I'm going to tie all this together. A lot of times, if you have a stock that's come a long ways off of its lows the way Apple has, and you want to protect yourself, and you're not necessarily heck bent on keeping that stock forever, you can sell calls against it. So in Apple, you could sell the 185 calls, the 190 calls. So if price goes up, you got to give it back. You got to give it to somebody else. But in the meantime, if it doesn't, if it just comes back and pauses or goes down a bit, well, then you get paid and you get to keep the options premium that you sold. So just throwing that out there. But you look, Apple's basically been in a trading range for the last 2 years. It peaked around January of 2022. It had a dip into mid-year, retested the low in January of this year and exceeded it a little bit. And why do I say that? Because Apple does have a history of faking investors out, and now it's going to the upside and it's exceeded its prior high. So is this a little bit of a fake out? Could be. Might be time for Apple to take a pause, especially with all the options activity this week. But going forward, it's just an incredible story, and it's hard to argue with the juggernaut.
Yeah, and also let's talk about currencies for a sec, related to what's going on with Japanese stocks. Foreign investors have been piling into Japanese stocks over the last few months. We've been talking about it. It's taken them to new highs. So, Jared, what are we seeing today?
Well, we're seeing a Japanese central bank that has been under pressure just because their policy of yield curve control has been a little bit, how should I say, a little bit too much for the markets. We've seen the yen devalue relative to the US dollar and most global currencies quite a bit. So this does present, it's not an imminent conflict or problem for the Bank of Japan, but they have big decisions to make around their meeting this week. I'm not expecting any big fireworks here. By the way, I would just mention in terms of central banks, we did get a rate cut by China, and this is coming as some other central banks around the world, those in countries with commodities like Canada, like Australia, they're raising their rates. So we have a situation that is probably on pause. Chinese are cutting. Other commodity currency countries, they are raising rates. All of this together, everybody's trying to figure out what the equilibrium is. And the fact is, nobody knows, because it takes time for all of these policy effects, for those lags to catch up with reality. So I do think it's prudent that the Fed is probably going to pause here and reassess. But with respect to the Bank of Japan decision, they're under the gun here. They cannot lose control of the market for Japanese government bonds, which they pretty much own right now. So they got to walk a tightrope that's even finer than Jerome Powell.
Yeah, that's saying something. Thanks so much, Jared. Appreciate it.